All right, so it's that time of the day. So we want to welcome everybody and give you some time to join. Welcome to our webinar for today from the Office of Off-Campus Student Family Engagement, actually Student and Family Engagement. We want to welcome everybody to our webinar for today, which is Leasing 101. Your student may be getting ready to move off campus or maybe looking for other places to live that are near or further away. And so we have a great guest today. Jay from Rent Monster is with us today, and I'll let him introduce himself in a few minutes. We also have Ben Mitt to show him. He serves as our off-campus student and coordinator and housing off-campus housing coordinator, and he will be able to give you a great invitation towards the end to the upcoming off-campus housing fair. In the meantime, just as we let people join us and get comfortable, if you have your lunch, by all means, enjoy your lunch. We want to remind you that this is being live streamed both on Facebook and we are here on Zoom. If you need to turn on the captions, you can do so at the bottom. I hope that you're actually also seeing them. If not, our presentation will also be uploaded to our website, uab.edu/families, in about a week with captions for you to view, review, share, and revisit as you need as your student needs to transition or is looking for a bit more of understanding of how to navigate the off-campus housing search experience. You will be getting a survey after our presentation today, and we really invite you to just take maybe 2 or 3 minutes. The survey is not long. We want to hear from you and what we can do to help you, to support you, and anything else, any other topics that you would like to hear about. The other thing that we also want to invite you to do is, as you have any questions, you're welcome to place your questions in the Q&A section of our presentation. You're welcome to send them through Facebook as well. I'll be monitoring both Facebook and our presentation. So if you see me looking sideways or a different direction, it's because I'm also looking to see if there's any questions that come up. So wonderful attendance. I see about 28 people here on Zoom and about two more on Facebook. So it's awesome that you're all here. And so we're going to go ahead and get started and invite Jay to come join us and start the presentation.
All righty, perfect. And do you want me to introduce myself and then Bim to introduce himself, or
I'll let you introduce yourself, Jay. I kind of said something, but I'll let you take it over.
All right, perfect. My name is Jay Raby. I am the senior leasing agent here at Rent Monster in Birmingham. And I've been working with Rent Monster for about 3 years now. And so I'm excited to be able to present Leasing 101 to you guys. It's a free course that we've created. Um, this webinar, this course itself is really it's designed to empower you with knowledge about the apartment industry in Birmingham. So that way, when you go out there and your student is looking for an apartment, you can really be, boots on ground and know your rights and everything that, your responsibilities and everything that's important when it comes to finding an apartment here. And so, Bimini, did you want to introduce yourself, or you want me to go ahead and jump right in?
Yeah, I don't mind. My name is Ben Mitzashom. I serve as our coordinator here in our off-campus student family engagement office here at UAB. We work really closely with Rent Monster. They are an awesome resource that we lean on. We refer a lot of our students to, and so y'all are in good hands here with Jay.
Perfect. Well, perfect. So we'll jump right in. If you want to access the course itself, you can find it on the link. It's listed rentmonster.net/education. The course is completely free if I haven't said that already. So all you have to do is put your name and your email in and you'll have access. And it takes about an hour long. So a lot of the stuff there, I highly, highly recommend just sitting down with your student and going over it with them. Even it's a lot of beneficial things there, but we'll jump into a lot of that here. And so we'll get started. Perfect. First, just a little bit about Rent Monster. Like I said, I'm the senior leasing agent here at Rent Monster, and it is Birmingham's apartment leasing company. So, our service is completely free. And the way that works, your student would come in, they would get partnered with an agent like myself, and we would take them around and really show them all the options and apartments that are available and help them with the decision process and really just making sure that everything goes smooth for them for the entire process and be there every step of the way. Alrighty, so as we get into everything, I know you guys can't speak or anything on here, but just something to think about. And this question will be answered as we go throughout. So how old do you have to be to lease an apartment on your own in Alabama? So it's just something to think about. I will get that answered here in a couple of slides for you guys, but we'll jump right in to some terminology. So first up, we have lease. A lease is legally binding. I'm sure that a lot of you already know this, but a lot of younger students aren't truly understanding of the gravity of that. And so a lot of times, when you're signing a lease, that is something that can be held up in court. That is something that, you want to make sure that you're reading over all of the details, everything, even the things that you think you already understand. We like to encourage any students that we help to really read over everything, go over it with their parents because it is legally binding. And, if you were to sign it and then change your mind next week and say, hey, I want, to go with something else, that's not really the way it works. It's, hard to get out of and can definitely cause a lot of headache in the long run if you aren't fully aware of everything that you're walking into there. So legally binding, you must be 19 years old in the state of Alabama in order to be on the lease as a leaseholder. So you're probably asking, Jay, what if, my student is 18 years old? Are we not going to be able to get them a place? What's going to happen in that situation? But no worries, we can still get your student taken care of. They just wouldn't be able to legally enter the contract as a leaseholder. They would be an occupant on the lease. And so with that being said, there must be someone that resides in the apartment that is 19 years old. So if your student is 18, for example, they have a roommate who's 19, the roommate would be listed on the lease as a leaseholder, and then the 18-year-old would be listed as an occupant. Perfect. And so the standard lease term is going to be 1 year. The thing to note about this is that this is in regards to like a standard apartment. That's pretty much what we work with is going to be your standard, apartment complex or apartment community. We won't go over too much in regards to like a student building or like a student housing situation. A lot of times it's a little bit different there because you will have a lease for each separate student in a building, whereas for a standard lease, there's only one lease for the entire apartment and everyone is on that lease. And so a lot of times the leasing terms can be different when it is a different lease for each student, and because you'll see subleases and things like that. And so for the most part, for a standard lease, you're going to be looking at 1 year. Oh, perfect. So rent, I'm sure everyone here is likely familiar with this, but it's just going to be simply put the amount paid monthly for the rental. So if you have, $1,000 a month, what someone is asking for, that would be the monthly amount that you pay to the apartment or to the landlord. A lot of times that price does not include utilities nowadays. Sometimes you can see that, but simply put, it's just the amount paid monthly for the rental. Prorated rent, this can get a little bit confusing. So prorated rent is the amount that your student would pay if they move in on a day other than the first of any given month. So if they move in halfway through March here, they would only pay half of March's rent since they didn't occupy the unit for the entire month. So it's also, it's something that is definitely great to be aware of. I think it's beneficial because why would you pay for the entire month if your student is only there for half of the month? And so prorated rent is just an adjusted amount based on how long your student occupies the unit. Perfect. Application. So this is a stage where things can get very stressful. You're wondering, hey, what all documents do I need to gather? You're worried about getting approved, and your student is wondering. There's so many questions that parents and students have when it comes to this stage, and it can be very stressful. So we're gonna go over some things that you need to upload, things that you need to have when it comes to the application stage once you found that perfect place. So most applications are going to be online. It's a form used to determine eligibility for renting. And with an application, you'll be asked to upload proof of income, a copy of photo ID like a driver's license, and then an application fee that can be anywhere between $50 to $100. And the main question that comes up here is Jay, my students are full time, they don't have time to work. There's a lot that goes on there. So like, how can we get them approved? And that is where you can come in as a cosigner or a guarantor. And so I've worked with tons and tons of UAB students where they have a parent or family member co-sign for them to help out with the eligibility for renting. So for example, for proof of income, a lot of apartments want to see that your student makes at least 3 times the rent. So just for an easy example, um, $1,000 a month is what they're asking. And they'll want to see that your student makes 3,000 a month, but they're a full-time student. They're working on that next stage of their life. And so you can come in as a co-signer and report your income, your credit history, and things of that nature, and help them to get approved. So, and it says co-signer, guarantor here. Those terms are synonymous. You'll see sometimes guarantor, sometimes co-signer. They mean the exact same thing. And so I just wanted to make sure that I made that point. So let's jump to the next one. So we've got some common fees. So fees and deposits, they're two different terms to be aware of here. Fees are usually non-refundable. Deposits are usually refundable at the end of the lease. So we'll go over some common fees first, and then we'll talk about deposits next. So one-time fees, these are usually fees, of course, one time that you pay up front. And then recurring fees are usually fees that are paid alongside your rent. So for one-time fees, the first thing that we have here is app fee. So the application fee typically ranges between about $50 to $100 per application. And I say per application because if you are co-signing for your student, a lot of times, and pretty much I've never seen it to where they won't expect both of you guys to submit an application. So if you're co-signing and your student is getting a place, just know that you both will need to submit applications. And then the admin fee. So the administrative fee, this is the fee that takes care of everything from application all the way to approval. So pulling up the lease, processing the application, things of that nature. This can range between $150 to $300 on average. And then the last one-time fee that is very important to note is pet fee. So if you have any furry friends, if your student is bringing along, Jerry, the cat, then you definitely you definitely want to be aware of pet fees. Sometimes they can be a little bit expensive, so it's important to note that they can range from anywhere from like $300 to $500. But just something to be aware of and take into account because you want to make sure that you're just getting the whole picture. And so with recurring fees. These, like I said, are usually paid alongside your rent. So a lot of times you will have a base rent amount of $1,000, and then you'll have a utility package or utility fee that encompasses a bundle of utilities like water, sewer, trash, and pest control. Sometimes you can even see internet included in this utility fee, but for the most part, it's usually only water, sewer, trash, and pest control that is at a flat rate that's paid alongside the rent. When it comes to parking fees, usually in the area around UAB, they don't charge parking fees. But when you get more like farther outside of downtown, more into the Loft District, north side of Birmingham, and even farther out, you will start to see some type of parking fee, which can range between like I would say $100 to $250. It really depends on the community itself. And then with insurance, this is another fee that is typically paid to the apartment itself if they offer it. Usually, that insurance fee only covers the building itself. This can range, I've seen it be as low as 10 up to $20 if you're paying it, directly to the apartment. But again, the thing to note with the insurance fee is that it only covers the building itself up to 100,000 in liability. So the thing that we always want to say is look into getting your own insurance that covers personal belongings. You want your students, but personal belongings to be covered if anything were to happen. And you also can save money here by bundling this with insurance that you already have. So if you have like an auto insurance or home insurance or anything like that, definitely go and talk to whatever company that you have insurance with and see if it just makes more sense to just bundle it and add some renter's insurance because it's usually just a couple of dollars extra a month and it's smarter to do it that way. And then the last recurring fee that is important to note is the pet rent. Now, everyone doesn't do pet rent. It's really a case by case basis. A lot of times this is between $10 to $30 a month, in addition to the pet fee. All right, so now we're going to jump into deposits. If you remember, deposits are going to be refundable at the end of the lease. So a lot of times this is in reference to security deposit. So once you have paid your application fee, the screening has been completed and you have been approved, typically they will request that a student or cosigner, anyone that's on the lease, pay that security deposit, and that takes the unit off the market and it reserves the apartment for your student. And so remember, you can only get this back at the end of the lease. So if your student, is approved and you guys go ahead and pay the security deposit, and then the next day they tour somewhere else that they love, but they've already paid the security deposit and they want to move forward with the second option. We can't get the security deposit back in that situation. It would be non-refundable at that point because it is not the end of the lease. And so once they've signed the lease, and, everything is good, there's no damages to the apartment or anything like that, you should be able to get the security deposit back at the end of the lease. Pet deposit. So this isn't very common anymore. A lot of times you'll just see a pet fee alongside a pet rent. If they don't ask for a pet fee, this is when you would see a pet deposit come in. And so this just covers any potential damages that your student's pet might cause to the apartment. If none ensues, then of course you would get that pet deposit back as well at the end of the lease. Perfect. All righty, that was a lot of terminology. And so I want to kind of break down the process from start to finish and explain some things that you might want to take note on from start to finish. So first, of course, find an apartment, hopefully with a Rent Monster leasing agent or with me. I'd love to help you guys, students, find their place here in Birmingham. But first, you're going to find an apartment. Second, you're going to submit the application and the app fees. Remember, on this step, you both will need to submit an application if you are co-signing or being a guarantor for your student. The third step is to get approved. This typically takes between 2 to 3 business days to hear back after you've submitted an application. Fourth, you're going to pay your security deposit and the admin fee. And then number 5, you're going to sign the lease. So when it comes to signing the lease, you can sign a lease now for a future start date. So it used to be that you would sign the lease on the day that you move in, but things are a little bit different now. They've changed a little bit in recent years. So if you're looking now and you and your student are touring and looking at places and your student is wanting to move in April 1st, you could go ahead and apply, get approved, pay that security deposit to reserve that unit for a lease start date in the future. And you would sign that lease after you've paid the deposit and admin fee. After you've signed the lease, this is where we're getting ready. This is the exciting part, you've got your place and your student is so ready to move in. Y'all are buying all the different things that they need, any furniture, if it's not a furnished unit, but you want to make sure before moving that you're paying your prorated rent, recurring fees, and pet deposits or fees. So these are all of those fees and deposits that we talked about just a second ago. After you've gotten all that taken care of, you're going to set up any utilities that are separate. So if something isn't covered in the utility bundle, for example, water, sewer, trash, and pest control are usually covered. And then electricity is the most common thing that we see separate. You would need to set up an account with Alabama Power just so that you can make sure that by the time of your lease start date, all the utilities are in order and everything is ready to go. A lot of times, you'll have to have a lease to set up certain utilities. It depends on the company. So you already have the lease signed and you'll present the company with that information to get that set up. And then after that, you get your keys on the lease start date and your student will be good to go. And in the case that, for example, let's say in the case that your student is 18 and you're wondering about getting the keys and they don't have a roommate, you can actually apply to be on the lease as a leaseholder. except you would have access. You would have keys as if you lived in the apartment with them. And some young students aren't comfortable with mom and dad having direct access sometimes. But it is an option if your student, doesn't have a roommate, but they're, under 19 and they still want to make sure that they have a place. So it's definitely something to consider. Alrighty. Jumping into qualifying. So we like to say crib. No, not the place you live, your credit, rental history, income, and background. And so these are the things that they're screening for when it comes to your application. These are the things that they're gathering for those 2 to 3 business days. So if your student is applying a loan, they want to see that they have good credit history, good rental history, income and background. And so remember, with income, they're looking to see that you make or that your student makes at least 3 times the rent before taxes are taken out. If you plan to co-sign, then they're going to want to see that you have a strong credit history, a strong rental history, as well as meet the 3 times multiplier for the income. And a lot of times you'll even see apartment complexes require that your income is higher. So sometimes they will go by the 3 times multiplier, but even so, sometimes you'll see 4 times or even 5 times when there's a cosigner or guarantor involved. And then with background, they just don't want to see any felonies. That's usually grounds for automatic denial, as well as violent misdemeanors. Alrighty, yes. And so, like I was saying, you can be a co-signer or guarantor for your student. My parents co-signed for me when I was in college and my whole kind of tenure throughout that, just because, I was a full-time student. I didn't have time. I had a little part-time job as a intramural ref, but it definitely wasn't enough to make $3,000 a month to help me get approved. And so you can be a co-signer for your student and you are on the hook. And so as a co-signer, you are legally binded into the contract and held responsible for adhering to all the terms and conditions there. So if your student were to, for some reason, not pay their rent or something, happened where they were evicted or anything like that, you're on the hook. It would reflect on your credit. And so I just really want to push home the point to read over the lease here. Make sure that you go through everything really in detail with your student and understand and ask questions too, make sure that if there's something that is confusing, ask, your leasing staff or the property manager or whoever, because they can clarify it. They're there for that. And you just want to make sure that everything is taken care of since it is legally binding. Perfect. Things to know about roommates. So if your student has a roommate, their crib will impact your student's qualifying chances. So for some reason, if the roommate has something on their background or maybe something wrong if they already have credit, this could result in your student not getting approved for the apartment. And so the point here is just make sure that your student or you are communicating with the roommate about their crib, their credit, rental history, income, and background, and what's all there, just to make sure that you don't end up losing any money on the back end, because we don't want to ever come out of pocket and have hundreds of dollars in application fees to find out on the back end that we weren't able to get approved because of something that we weren't aware of on someone's crib. So just be sure that there's active communication there. And then roommates also lower costs. So if your student is right now is going to be by themselves and they're thinking about, a 1 bedroom apartment, right now the average for a 1 bedroom apartment is around like 900 to 1,000 a month, which can be a lot. And if you have a roommate, the average 2 bedroom right now is probably around 1,200 a month. And so you're looking at 1,000 by yourself versus with a roommate, 600 per student. And that's a lot more feasible. And it just it lowers some of the stress as well when it comes to lowering the cost and making sure that everyone is taken care of. Perfect. And you can have a cosigner for each student. Not a lot of students or parents know this one. A lot of times it is not required or necessary, but you definitely, I personally would want to do this because it allows you to be responsible for your students. So if you just don't feel comfortable being the co-signer or guarantor on the lease for your student and their roommate, have that conversation with the roommate's parents. Can we both co-sign? Can I co-sign for my student and you co-sign for your student? And that is definitely something that you can do. You just need to communicate that to the property manager prior to signing the lease so that they can make sure that everyone on the lease, each co-signer, each student is accounted for. And with that, every tenant and co-signer on the lease is on the hook for everything, all the terms and conditions in the lease. Remember, it's a legally binding contract. I really love to push that point home because it is very important, and we just want to make sure that everyone is aware. Perfect. Another trivia. So this is something to think about. We just talked about it. What's another word for co-signer? We all know it is a guarantor. Perfect. So we're just talking about communication and important is so build a property manager and a leasing staff. And we just say that because the number one thing we hear from property managers about students is problems communicating. So a lot of times, things happen, and your student may need something taken care of in their apartment, some maintenance or anything. And having that ability to go down the hall and have that relationship and talk to your property manager goes a long way to getting things done in a timely manner and making sure that they're safe, that the building is, in a livable condition. Things happen, so you definitely want to make sure that that there's a good relationship between your student and their leasing staff or property manager. So just encourage them to go, kind of step out of the comfort zone, go to those events. A lot of communities will host events or like community events for their residents. And so just make sure that, encourage them to go to those events, talk to their property managers while they're there. It doesn't even have to be about anything regarding the lease, just, how's your day going kind of thing would even work just in building that relationship.
Hey
Perfect.
Jay, sorry to interrupt. There's actually a quick question if you are willing to answer.
Yeah.
So someone's asked, can you pay the lease with student loans?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. So, that truly depends on what the student loans are allocated for. So it would need to be allocated for housing specifically in order for them to accept it as income or something sufficient to prove income. If it's like I know with FAFSA sometimes they don't specify specifically like what it's for. So a lot of times that can be used as like supplemental income, but not income that is like provable in terms of saying that you make at least or you will have enough to cover the entire rent every month. So you just want to make sure that if you're pulling out a private loan or any student loan, just make sure that it is, denoted for housing specifically.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Alrighty, perfect. This is the last little bit. So Alabama Tenants Handbook. This was created by the Low Income Housing Coalition of Alabama. This is pretty much what Leasing 101 is, derived from. There's a lot of stuff in this handbook, a lot of tenant rights and responsibilities that we'll go over quickly here, that are in the course. And so you can find it at the link here, lihca.org/Alabama-tenants-handbook. Bimnet, I'm not sure. Do y'all still have some of these in the off-campus? Okay, great. So you can pick these up at the off-campus student housing office as well as, here at Rent Monster, we keep them on hand.
And I think we also have it listed on our website as well. We have like the digital PDF. So,
Okay, perfect, perfect. Yeah, so there's plenty of places where you can grab this. We always hand them out on tours as well. Just, it's good to be aware of your rights. And so let's jump right into that. Well, we got a trivia first. So, how many days notice does a landlord have to give you to do upkeep and repairs? So the answer to this is 2 days. And that is if it's not a emergency or something that was requested. So if it's an emergency or a requested service or repair, they don't have to give notice. But outside of that, those scenarios, they have to give 2 days notice to enter and repair. So first is tenant rights. Perfect. So the law says the landlord has to do certain things to keep your place livable. They have to meet all building and housing codes that affect health and safety. They have to maintain all electrical, plumbing, sanitary, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems in good working order. Now, this doesn't mean that they have to pay for the power or anything like that. They just have to maintain and make sure that the system itself is working in good condition. Same thing with supplying running cold and hot water. They do not pay for, the utility fee or that bundle, or if water is separate for some reason, they don't pay for that to Birmingham Water Works. But they just have to make sure the system and the pipes and everything is correct, is functioning correctly. Your landlord has to provide a source of heat in the winter. If you pay for heat directly, however, your landlord doesn't have to pay your bill. Provide and maintain garbage containers. Keep common areas safe and clean. They have to let you have peaceful enjoyment of your place, and they have to make repairs to keep your place safe and livable. Perfect. Second, I'm covering up my words here. Okay, perfect. So the law allows the landlord to have rules and regulations as well. These rules have to apply to all tenants. So there can't be any exceptions, anything like, saying that um, one resident can hang something on the wall of the balcony, but this resident is not allowed to do that. They have to apply the same rules to everyone. Everyone is subject to the same rules. The rules have to promote the convenience, safety, or welfare of the tenants or protect the property from abuse. The landlord has to inform you of the rules before you sign the lease. Again, make sure you read all that in detail. During your lease term, the landlord can't enforce a new rule that affects your use of your own place without your written consent. In addition, the law also says there's things the landlord can't do. So they can't raise the rent or make any changes during the term of your lease. So during that standard 12 months, there can't be any changes made. They can't say, oh, I need a little bit more money, and I'm going to raise the rent. That's not something that they legally can do in any fashion. There can be addendums that are made, but in order for those addendums and changes to go into effect, everyone on the lease has to agree and sign for that to go into effect. So otherwise, there can't be any changes during the term of your lease. The law also says the landlord can't engage in retaliatory conduct. So this means the landlord can't threaten to evict you. They can't decrease your services or raise your rent because you complain or there's a maintenance thing or anything at all. They cannot react in a retaliatory way. Alrighty. And then another trivia question. Can a landlord hold the actions of your guests against you? So if your student is having friends over, or they're studying or whatever the case may be, can the landlord hold actions of their guests against them? We'll get into that with tenant responsibilities. Alrighty. So you have the responsibility to be a good tenant. The law outlines specifically what this means, and so you have to pay your rent on time. If you owe a late fee, pay it with your rent. If you pay in cash or by cashier's check, it's a good idea to get a receipt signed by the landlord. So a good practice in general when it comes to, leasing an apartment, keep receipts for everything. And I mean everything because you never know. And I mean like text works, emails work, email threads, keep receipts of everything because all of that can be upheld in court and used for your benefit. So definitely make sure that you get a receipt signed by the landlord or anything of that nature. Um, Keep the place clean and in good shape. Your student must use all electrical, plumbing, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems in a reasonable manner. They must dispose of garbage and rubbish in the correct way. Do your part to keep the common areas safe and clean. Let the landlord come into your place, usually within 2 days written notice, like we already discussed, unless you have requested repairs, then they may enter without that notice of 2 days. But they must be able to come into the place to inspect the condition or fix something. Follow the landlord's rules for use of the property, and then one that I was surprised to find out myself when I first started here was tell your landlord if you will be away for 2 weeks or more. So You would think, I've paid my full month's rent on the first. I have a trip in this spring break and I'll be gone a little bit longer. I'll be gone for 2 weeks. I'll be all good because I already paid my rent in full for the entire month. So, technically, according to the law, if you are gone for 2 weeks or longer without notice to your landlord, they can declare the unit vacated. Um, and that is, something that nobody wants to deal with and having to scramble to find somewhere else to live. And so just make sure you tell your landlord or encourage your students to tell their leasing staff that they will be away for 2 weeks or more, or if the electricity will be shut off for 7 days or more. And the law also includes some don'ts for the tenant as well. Don't give any false or misleading information in your application or lease. This is very, very important. We're seeing more falsified pay stubs, things of that nature. And in the long run, if your student has moved in, they've been living there for 2 months, and somehow the landlord discovers that there was falsified or misleading information in regards to the application to get approved. Legally, if they find that, they can require that you vacate the property, they can kick you out. And, that's also something that we want to avoid. So just don't give any false or misleading information in the application or lease. Don't disturb your neighbors. This includes, loud sounds, even smells. That's one that goes, not noticed. Sometimes, there can be strong foods or maybe trash that just isn't disposed of the correct way, or even incense sometimes can be a little bit strong. And so just make sure you don't disturb your neighbors. You don't want to get any complaints or anything like that. Don't trash the place or let your guests trash it. So this is the answer to the trivia. The landlord can hold the actions of your guests against you. So if your student has any guest over or anything like that, and they break something, then that would be on your student to repair, not repair, but rather pay for it if something were to happen. It's on the landlord's job to repair it though. Let's see. All righty. This is just an overview of what all is in Leasing 101. The course itself goes a lot more in detail than we do here on the webinar. Um, and we even have some of our agents, when they're starting out, go through this course so that they're aware of, the people that they're supporting. They know how to really support their clients and take and go forth with finding an apartment. So it talks about terminology, qualifying, and smart money moves, things that just help you better qualify and be prepared to apply. Because again, those application fees are non-refundable. So I want to talk about that up front. It talks about tenant rights, tenant responsibilities, and then some questions to ask. And then this is just a breakdown of what is in each section of Leasing 101. Alrighty, last one. Should you stop paying rent if a landlord isn't doing what they should do according to the Alabama Tenants Handbook? The answer to this is no. Do not stop paying your rent. Because if they aren't upholding their end of the deal and you decide to stop paying rent when this is taken to court, it could it wouldn't be the result that you wanted to. When you continue to pay the rent and doing the things that you should and uphold your end of the bargain, that looks way better in court. If something were to go wrong and they weren't upholding their end of the bargain. Perfect. And that is all that I have. I really hope that I covered everything really well for you guys. This is one of my first times doing this, and so hit me with all the questions that you have, and I'll try to answer them the best that I can.
What's,
Ah, oh, please.
I'm sorry, but fantastic, fantastic, Jay. Lots of information. I'll let Benmit and you work on some of the questions. I am going to put a UAB transportation link on the chat so families can look at what's available transportation wise within the vicinity of UAB, but I'll let you work on some questions. Benmit, if you want to walk them through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our questions is, I think this is as a follow-up. from our first question talking about how you can pay your lease or your rent. Someone asked how can you pay with your scholarships or a 529 account, so like a tax advantaged account.
Savings account. Okay, yes. So with your scholarships, it would be similar to loans. They need to be allocated specifically for um for housing in order for them to be accepted as a form of income or something that will be allocated for the lease specifically.
And I know with the university scholarships, if you're applying for scholarships through UAB, they have some. It really some of like Jay said, some are specific for education and academic needs. But if you are a student who does have a lower, say you have a lower electronic bill, and you get a scholarship that's going to cover more than what your bill is, and the student will essentially just get that money put into their whatever account is connected to their e-bill or the parent's account. And so, yes, once that money comes to you, you can use that for housing needs. If you are getting scholarships externally from, national organizations or things beyond the university, that is not a problem. They now I would also, take into account what the specific usage of those scholarships say when applying, but typically, like I said, those will just go straight to your account, and then you can use those as needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. One more point on that. A lot of times, if like the example that Bimini gave, if there's additional um, funds left over from the scholarship and it goes directly to your account, one of the things that you can upload or connect as proof of income, sometimes they accept bank statements. And so once you have that, money in your account, you can also use that to help you get approved or cover the funds of, your rent.
Oh, absolutely. And this question, Jay, you might have some input, but I can also cover a little bit of this. Somebody asked if there is university transportations or shuttle services that can take students that are living off campus to campus or from campus to their residential areas. And they also asked which neighborhoods are considered safe for students living off campus, and are there any university partnered apartment complexes for students to get like discounts from or anything. And so from what the university side of things, the Blazer shuttle, or the Blazer Express, which is the university shuttle system, only works for campus. So anything in the UAB jurisdiction. That being said, so it will not take students to their apartment complexes or where they're living. However, there are many stops that are close enough to apartments where they just have to walk a block to wherever they're living, if it's somewhere, like I said, within that UAB vicinity. And then at nights, there is a security shuttle that can take students beyond campus. That is strict timing. So I think it works between like 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. Don't hold me to that, but it's somewhere around that time where students, if they are coming out of the library really late at night and they're just not feeling, safe or comfortable walking that far, or they're just really drained, they can call the security shuttle free of charge, and that shuttle will take them to where their respective housing or car, if need be. And then, do you have any public transportation advice, Jay, or any add-ons to that question or that part of the question?
No, I think you answered it perfectly. That was what I was thinking about for that part of the question. What was the last two parts?
Yeah, yeah. So
And
the
if I
last two
may,
parts.
along
Oh,
those
sorry.
lines, I just posted, so families can also go into uab.edu/transportation, and it'll show you all the different transportation options. And so that's somewhere where you can also get information to see where the stops are and what's available in the schedule.
Right.
Absolutely. That can help you make a decision based off of where you want to live or where your student wants to live. And then the second part to that question, Jay, was which neighborhoods are considered safest for students living off campus, and are there any like partnered apartments that work with the university? And I can answer that side of that question. But yeah, if you have any advice for the first half.
Yeah, of course. So the fair housing law prevents me as a leasing agent from talking about safety of an area. And that's just because once you get into that, it can blur the lines with some discriminatory behavior. And when you're talking about the safety of an area, you're talking about the people of an area, and that breaks fair housing law. But what we can talk about is the safety features and aspects of a given community. So if they have cameras, what the access looks like, if it's smart access, if it's key fob, what, gated parking if it has that sort of thing. All of this safety features of the apartment is what we can definitely talk about. And there's also resources out there like
Yep.
spotcrime.com.
Mhm.
That definitely gives you some statistics when it comes to different areas of Birmingham and breaking down what goes on in those areas.
Absolutely. And yeah, Jay hit it right on the head. With our students, we encourage them to be cautious. Don't bring habits that have, that they're bringing from other places when living on their own. We want them to stay on the safe side of things. And so that, that falls the responsibility for themselves to lock their doors, make sure they're not giving keys out to anybody, as well as just, being aware of their surroundings and reporting things as needed. Because what we see the most of is students not reporting things that could have avoided a situation that happen eventually. And so we do just encourage our students to stay aware and stay cautious, and just kind of follow those safety tips. And like Jay said, there are some external resources online, like crimegrade.org and such, where you can kind of look at maps based off of what's happening where in the city and average amounts of things and such. And then in terms of our university partnered apartment complexes, and getting UAB discounts. Unfortunately, that is not something we have. So we typically are, when we say, our university off-campus partners, what we necessarily mean is these partners that these properties that are willing to work with UAB in the sense of, if your student is having a hardship at that property, if they're having an issue navigating, a roommate issue or a utility issue or management misunderstanding or miscommunication or really anything of that nature. We value our partnership with these departments, and so we step in where needed, and there those properties are always willing to work with us as a sense of a mediator. We obviously can't be your students, law representation when it comes to things like this, but we can be their aid and their kind of moderator. We'll make sure that they understand everything that is being told of them, or if there is some misunderstanding amongst the process, we can always help educate that. And so, no necessarily any discounts for UAB students. We do have a UAB off-campus housing website, which is a site that's powered through apartments.com that students can use, and it has a little map function and some properties, if they depending on what their package is with apartments.com, they can post on this site as well. And so those aren't necessarily anybody that UAB students get discounts through, but there are a lot of properties in the area that have various discounts. Not necessarily for rent, but like some might cut like your application fee for a student just because they recognize that income's not that big for a lot of our students, full-time students especially. And so there's like accommodations there. And Jay touched on these earlier. There's always promotions. Promotions are honestly a lot of the times angled towards students. And what I mean by that is they'll open them around the time that students are looking for housing. And so those promotions are honestly just as good as any discount you can get anywhere else.
Right, right. And there are a few communities out there for sure where, like Bennett said, they may waive the admin fee. I've seen that a lot of times. So if UEB is like not a preferred employer, but also like for students, they will waive admin fees or cut an application fee in half or things of that nature is usually what you see. But there's not as commonly a discounted special on rent specifically for UAB students, because that would technically be a violation of the fair housing law as well. They have to provide the same specials to everyone. And so what they'll do is they'll have the specials starting around the time that UAB students are going to be looking, but those specials apply to everyone.
Absolutely. Awesome, awesome. And then I see one last question, Jay. Someone asked, are house rentals similar to apartment rentals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we very rarely, specifically Rent Monster, very rarely have houses, single family homes available for rent. In terms of the process, it is very similar, depending on the management. So if it's something that's managed by like an individual or a private owner, a lot of times they will be looking for the same things in crib. So credit, rental history, income, and background. And they're going to be basing these off of the same kind of multipliers and three times the rent. And so the process is very similar. It really just depends.
Oh, absolutely. And there is actually another question, but I can cover this one. It's asking, is it safe to say apartments outside of UAB have been vetted through your agencies? And so I do want to clarify, we don't necessarily have any partners that we work with on like a contract base, or we use the word partner loosely in the sense that we will collaborate with these apartments to navigate any issues. If there's any educational points that we can touch on that we're seeing at certain apartments, we'll work with them to make sure their students and tenants are aware of these expectations and such. But in terms of these apartments beyond the downtown area and beyond what's on our website, because that's typically what people think like our partnered apartments. We use word of mouth, and so our students come to us with issues from these respective properties, and that's necessarily how we get a lot of our knowledge, because obviously we do not have any contracted partnerships with these properties. We work alongside them when need be, but we are not necessarily like, making sure that every apartment complex in Hoover and Vestavia and such are abiding by, university regulations, because university regulations are Alabama tenant regulations and housing regulations. There's nothing special there. However, what I would tell your student to do, or any other student that's living off campus, is I always encourage them to leave reviews on the website. The UAB site is for UAB students, and so who no one necessarily wants to hear from me. And my opinion is they want to hear from students that are living there, paying the same rent as them, living in the same community as them. And so we always encourage our students, if you have something to say it on our site. We're not filtering anything. If a student wants to leave their honest and transparent opinion on a place that they live at, feel free to do it on our site under the reviews page. And I can drop a link to our UAB off-campus housing website if you're curious and exploring and such.
Yeah,
Ben,
that would be very helpful. And I think one other thing to keep in mind is, as a parent myself, who my student moved off campus at one point, visiting different, if you're in the area or if you're able to come with your student, just visiting different properties and getting the feel for them is also important. Your student may not want you there, but I think as Jay was going through all the new responsibilities and the newness of the whole process, it is important to help them understand that this is something you're going to work on together. It's a learning process for both, and in the end, they can become independent future lessees or looking for another place to live. So,
right.
yeah.
And Bimnet, this is something that someone may be thinking. I've had a lot of questions about this recently, and I want to see if you can touch on it. Um, what about students who are looking for a roommate? Is there any resources that are out there for students that are looking for roommates and they don't know anybody just yet? Or
Absolutely. No, that's a fantastic question. Especially for, our, we see this with all of our students, but even like, especially our transfer international students are coming in with the restrictions around living on campus because of limitations there. And so they're needing to find somewhere off campus to live. And it's always, usually more affordable with a roommate. We encourage all of our students to use, on that link that I just sent into the chat, our UAB off campus housing website has a roommates function where students can explore essentially what they'll have to do is create a profile on the site. This is a UAB restricted site, so anybody can look at the housing options on this site. But in order to use any of the additional contact features, roommate features, or even add a listing, they have to be a student. And so they'll type in their UAB credentials, and they can create little profiles saying I'm Jay and I'm a blank 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 major and I go and I'm looking for two roommates to live at this place. And then other students can, scroll through other profiles, see if there is someone that's looking for the same type of living situation or has the same kind of lifestyle as them, and then reach out through the website. But if you reach out through the website, it'll contact the student via their UAB email. So very UAB secure. If anything ever happens on that site, we facilitate and oversee it, and so they can always come to us. And we always encourage students, if you're looking to meet somebody that you've never met before that's going to potentially be your roommate, do it in our space. We have a off-campus student lounge in our Hill Student Center here at UAB, and it's a space for commuter students to, come hang out, study, do whatever they need to do. But it's also a space where we're here to oversee any issues that are coming in, or if students are in need of like a consultation. We're happy to sit down with them or like mediate. But we always encourage you to do it on campus, and then if you feel comfortable and safe with the person afterwards, and then start touring some options with them. But move at the speed that you need to move at.
Yeah, I think all of this is great advice. And I think as we get to the end of our webinar today, and I thank everybody for attending and for sharing their questions, a couple of things before we go. If you have additional questions that come to mind later on, you can always send them to families@uab.edu. And I have placed that email address on the chat that you can access, or you can call us in our office, and then we will be able to field your questions. Before we go, I think because we've been talking about off-campus housing options and how to navigate the leasing process. And so I think Benmet has a great pitch right here that will be very useful on this day.
Awesome, awesome. So might steal the screen from you, Jay.
Yes. Stop
So
sharing.
no worries. Are y'all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So, in 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks from now, we will be holding our annual UAB off-campus housing fair. This will be a space for students to come out and talk to some of these partners. Jay and Rep Monster included. They will be out there engaging with students, answering any questions about upcoming offers they have or services that they can provide for students while they're looking for housing for the fall semester. This is a great, awesome opportunity for students to get the ball rolling on looking for housing here at UAB because I can't speak for everybody. For myself, I feel like I blinked and it was already March, and I fear if I blink again, it will be August. And so preparing for it will come fast. And so this is a great start for students. And they'll also be eligible, they'll get to engage with these partners and hear about the promotions that they will be offering come for students that are signing for the fall semester. This is open for all of our students. It'll happen from 10 to 2 o'clock outside on the campus green. And this is also open for, this is open for current students, but this is also open for prospective students. We've had students that are transferring in come to campus early and talk to some of these partners. We've had students that are, that are international students that are coming here. And they're here a little early, come to this fair. And so it's a great opportunity. I would encourage your students to come out if they are on campus already. And if not, it's a great place to expose yourself to what's out there after your time living on campus at UAB or living wherever you're living right now. It's a great place to kind of understand what options you have. And so that will be taking place not this next week because that is spring break for UAB, but the week after that, March 18th, on the campus green. And if weather does not permit, we will go into the University Recreational Center. But we're really hoping that we can have this outside, especially while the weather's pretty decent for the time being before it gets pretty hot out here, the Alabama heat. But yes, and so definitely encourage your student to come out. And then just some additional information for you all. We in the UAB off-campus student family engagement office, like I said, we work with Red Monster a ton. They are an amazing resource for our students, and we relay them to them all the time. However, if your student's on campus and is looking for some campus guidance and just starting the process, we offer lease reviews for students, and even after they've met with Red Monster. If they found them a place, we are happy to sit down with them and review that lease. We hold housing fairs every year, and then we create something called the Off-Campus Housing Guide, which is a guide we create every year with some university resources for students in regards to transportation, affording off-campus housing, and just some tips and such, as well as we hold programs for students, things like Leasing 101. We actually have one coming up with Rent Monster for students coming for the spring semester in, I think, April. And we'll do a lot of educational events, but we'll also do social events because, off-campus students, they live off-campus, so they need those on-campus engagement opportunities no matter where they live. And so those are just some things about what we do. And again, we work really greatly and closely with Red Monster, and they're an amazing resource. And so I cannot recommend them enough. I've gotten the pleasure of working with Jay for a little over a year now, and he's been fantastic for our students. And so if your student's looking for anything, tell them to reach out.
Awesome. And we've come to the end of our time, and we thank everybody again who was here. You will be getting a survey in a few minutes about our presentation today. And we also want to remind you that about our webinar tomorrow, Spring Break Safety. Spring break is coming next week, and your student may have plans. And it's always good to have those conversations about how to stay safe and have a wonderful time. So we thank you. Thank you, Jay, for presenting today. And thank you, Mehmet, for being here. And if you have any questions, please send them over to us. We'll be glad to help you out. And we hope to see your student and who knows, maybe you at the off-campus student housing fair on March the 18th. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And we will see you soon. Thank you. Bye, Jay.
Bye bye.